Hey everybody, this is TJR,
And this is Superfan.
and we're just hanging out with the little guy here. Hey buddy, it's okay. It's okay. It was just a movie. It was just a movie. It wasn't real.
He wants a hug. Give
Okay,
him
I'll give
a
him a little hug. Come here, little guy. It's okay. It's all right. Maybe we should have let him watch it with us. But anyway,
Well,
so
he wanted to.
yeah, he said he wanted to. But
He's 50. You wouldn't think.
yeah, you think it. Come on, you're 50 years old. Stop being such a baby.
Well,
Uh, so, anyways, everybody, we just finished watching The Shining, the Stanley Kubrick version of the film. I know there's more than one film version, but everybody thinks of the Stanley Kubrick version, of course. And don't give me that look. Anyways, though, um, I have not seen that movie in probably a good 40 years. I saw it sometime in the early 80s, early mid 80s. I saw it in a theater. And lately I've been kind of revisiting Stanley Kubrick, kind of, kind of revisiting some of his films. Of course, 2001: A Space Odyssey is one of my favorite movies of all time. I've seen it numerous times. But I recently watched two of his earliest works, Killer's Kiss and The Killing, for the first time. Oh, and also Paths of Glory.
yeah, I was going to say, don't forget that one.
Yeah, I'd never seen those three very early films before. But I had kind of been like, I'd watched a few YouTube videos about some of Kubrick's other films and saw a couple of them about The Shining and just realized how long it had been and decided I kind of wanted to rewatch it again and see how it plays now versus then. Because sometimes you look at a film at one age and you see it very differently at another age. I remember watching Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan the first time in my 20s and then seeing it later in my mid to late 40s, and the whole scene with Kirk having to deal with the fact that he has to wear reading glasses and all of that just played very differently for me. Because in my 20s, I didn't need reading glasses. By the time I was in my mid to late 40s, I definitely was wearing reading glasses and still do. Here, why don't you go sit over here, little guy, while we talk about the film? But let me ask you. Now, of course, I know you're a big fan of Stephen King. You've read his books, and you've read this book, of course.
Yeah.
Had you read it before or after seeing the movie?
Before.
Okay. Now, when did you first see the movie? Did you see it when it first came out?
No, it would have been on video in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's been a long time.
Okay. Well, yes, same thing for you, a long time. But anyways, we just thought we'd kind of share some of our thoughts on the film, not having seen it in so long.
Yeah.
And in fact, when I saw The Shining, it was one of the first times that I had ever watched a horror film. I was basically kind of raised to not watch them. You don't want to see these movies because they're scary.
Yeah.
And you'll have nightmares for weeks.
Yeah, me too. I can remember really, really wanting to see the Amityville Horror when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was probably too young to see it, but I wanted to.
The difference between you and me then was that when I was a kid, like I said, I was raised. You don't want to see these movies. Avoid them at all costs. They will keep you up at night. You'll have nightmares for months. It worked, basically. I didn't want to see these movies growing up as a kid. I didn't want to.
Yeah. Well, your mom made a big thing about, like, her big scary movie was Frankenstein.
Yeah. She said she was terrified by Frankenstein as a little girl.
Yeah. She saw it when she would have been probably 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah. It terrified her.
Definitely less than 10.
Yeah, she never ever let go of that memory of how much it terrified her, how it terrified her for weeks afterwards, how it would terrify her, before she'd go to bed. It really left that kind of a strong impression on her. And I think she just carried that when she raised us.
Yeah, it carried that on over. Horror movies were scary, and you don't watch
You
them.
don't want to watch them. Yeah. And but anyways, though, I remember when I saw The Shining, I thought it was really good. Of course, I already knew who Stanley Kubrick was, and
Yeah.
I think I made the exception because it was Stanley Kubrick. At this point in my life, even then, 2001: A Space Odyssey was already one of my favorite movies of all time. It has always remained one of my favorite movies of all time. I know I had already seen Barry Lyndon, which was one of his follow-ups. It was not the follow-up, but it was one of the follow-ups. I hadn't seen A Clockwork Orange, and I knew I had seen Spartacus on
Hmm.
television. But just the fact that he made 2001: A Space Odyssey alone was, okay, that's good enough for me. And I remember thinking it was a good film. I remember really liking Jack Nicholson at the time. Um, your thoughts when you first saw it? What were some of your thoughts when you first saw it? Especially since you read the book.
Um, it differed from the book quite a bit.
Yeah,
And while I understand why they didn't do
certain things.
certain things, the maze
Yeah, I
did.
understand the maze comes to life in the book.
Yeah, there were animals. There were topiary animals, and those came to life in the book.
It wasn't a maze. They were just the
No,
head.
it was
It was both.
they were around. They like decorated the maze with the topiary animals.
Yeah.
The book was more about the supernatural aspect of it. The movie wasn't, and I kind of missed that.
Hmm. I know that after the film came out and before the days when owning movies was possible, I remember criticisms about Stanley Kubrick from fans of horror films and fans of Stephen King saying that Kubrick didn't get horror because he didn't believe in the supernatural. So therefore, he didn't, in his mind, nothing supernatural happened in the film. It was all Jack Nicholson going crazy. And I remember that criticism. Um, and that was after I saw the film. I remember having a friend of mine who was a big fan of horror films complain to me about that and tell me about that. Looking back now, I have to wonder, did he really watch the film? Because if nothing supernatural was happening, it was all just in Jack Nicholson's head and his character, the head of his character, then how did Shelley Duvall's character, Wendy, see all the bizarre things that she saw at the film's end? All the weird, all the skeletons in the ballroom, the weird scene with the guy dressed as a bear, one of the most disturbing scenes in the world. How did she see all that? So I have to disagree. Now that I've seen it again, it's been so long.
Yeah.
I have to basically say that, my friend who was a big horror film fan and anybody else who's ever criticized it for that reason, maybe Stanley Kubrick in real life didn't believe in anything supernatural, but it's a horror film. So for the sake of the film, the sake of the story, the supernatural exists. In the same way that I'm sure Peter Jackson doesn't believe that hobbits are real, but within the story of the Lord of the Rings, they're real. They exist. So I
Yeah.
kind of have to say, no, you're wrong to all those people that I remember telling me that complained about the film for that reason. I thought you didn't watch the film, did you? Or you didn't watch it very closely, or you allowed yourself to believe something even after you saw it. But at any rate, though, I felt like I had to just get that off my chest. Also, I want to talk about our reactions to it now. As we were watching tonight, during the big climactic scene where Jack Nicholson's character is chasing after Wendy with the axe, you said, in retrospect, of course, Jack Nicholson was the perfect choice to play the Joker. And the thing is when I watched the film back in the 80s, as I was watching it, I thought, because have been a big Batman fan my whole life, read the comics, if you mentioned Batman to anybody, all they could think of was the Adam West TV show. I was reading the comics, which were much darker, and the Joker was, of course, a homicidal murderer in the comics I was reading, but that's not what everybody's impression was because they only knew the TV series with Adam West. And I remember watching it, I thought, if they ever make a Batman movie now, they got to cast Jack Nicholson as the Joker. And of course, a few years later, that's exactly what happened.
Well, they must have listened to you.
They must have listened to me, obviously. So, the film now, any thoughts about it that you want to share before I discuss mine?
That kid was a good actor.
Yeah. And you were telling me that
I read in the wiki
okay.
that in the commentary they said that Stanley Kubrick told the kid he was making a family drama about a family who lived in a hotel and that it wasn't a horror movie.
I can see where you might want to do that with a little kid, but as I watched the film, I kept thinking, how did he pull that off with that kid? Because did he say, okay, now look really terrified? How could he do the scenes he did? You know, okay, now you talk to your finger and your finger talks back. And, you know, now your little imaginary friend says, Danny's not here. You know, it's like, how did he direct him? And yet the kid doesn't think it's a horror film. I just kept thinking about that, thinking, how in the world was that possible?
Yeah, how does that work?
I just have trouble believing that. I don't know, maybe kids were more gullible then than now.
Yeah.
To
a certain extent, yeah. He was, I think, 6 or 7 during the filming of it.
Yeah.
So maybe he just wasn't even aware that it was a genre.
Yeah. It's very possible. It's very possible that that's the case. That just, whatever. I'm just, in a movie. I do understand though that he was very, and like I said, this is just from watching YouTube videos about the making of the film, and that is why I kind of wanted to see this film again, is that he was very hard on Shelley Duvall, almost to the point of abusive. And I have, of course, heard other accountings that Stanley Kubrick is known for taking enormous amounts of takes, 20 takes, 50 takes. He in Eyes Wide Shut, he'd have Tom Cruise do a scene like at one point I heard like 90 times, shoot the same scene over and over again. And what I've heard his approach was that he would try to wear down his actors, make them do it so many times to where they stop acting, and that hopefully something else that neither of them expected emerges out of a performance. I'll admit Shelley Duvall was amazing in this film.
Yeah.
Just the absolute terror that she portrays. The scene where she finally walks into the room where her husband has supposed to have been writing his book this whole time, and looks at all this stack of papers that says nothing but all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And she goes after page after page after page. I remember at one point you said, why does she even keep looking? And I just said, because she's just can't believe it. It's dawning on her now that her worst fears are true. And it's so hard to accept. And it's just so hard to wrap your brain around it. All this time she thought he was working on a book, and this is all he's been writing over and over and over again, line after line. And you have to, and as I'm watching this, I'm thinking someone had to sit and type all of those pages, because sometimes they're in different forms, different paragraph breaks. There's even some where they have a cascading. You've got paragraphs that have the sort of like cascading design to them, and someone had to write all that. You can't just have an AI or a computer create that for you.
Not then.
Not then. No, someone had to sit there and hand type all that. Yeah, but her performance to me is, along with the kid, I mean, Nicholson's really good, But Nicholson's being over the top. I think he has the easier job
Yeah.
because I think that he excels. He has always excelled at being over the top and being very maniacal,
Yeah.
being kind of like a guy on the edge. Even at the film's beginning, before he supposedly has gone crazy, even when he's in the interview scene at the very beginning of the film, he already looks like he's just bug nuts.
Yeah, he's just waiting.
Yeah, you can see it there.
And that was the final push.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I think he had the easier job because
it's easier to play crazy.
I think it's easier to play crazy than it is to play terrified. Because, you know,
yeah, the cause of the terror is not real and you know it.
Yeah.
You're not in danger.
But yeah, Shelley Duvall, I remember when I saw it in the 80s, what I enjoyed the most was Jack Nicholson. But watching it now, who I really admire is Shelley Duvall.
Yeah.
And just the absolute terror that she plays. You know, there's a scene there where, of course, after Jack Nicholson comes through with the axe and he puts his head through the hole and says, "Here's Johnny." You know, the whole Johnny Carson thing. But then he has to leave because he hears Scatman Crothers driving up in the snowcat.
Yeah.
Whose character I felt very sorry for because he tried to do the right thing and he went so far out of his way to do the right thing. Shelley Duvall stands in that room for a while. You know, she doesn't immediately go running.
No.
And
well, she did cut his hand with the knife.
Yeah, she did cut his hand with a knife. And of course, then they both hear the snowcat. She hears it coming from the window. He hears it. And of course, he goes off to find out who it is. You know?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want anybody interrupting his work. And Shelley Duvall stands there for a while just trying to collect herself. And I could see where some audiences might sit and say, "Why doesn't she do something? She should do something." It's like, she is mortified. She's terrified. You know, she is in such a state of terror.
And she doesn't understand what's happening.
She doesn't understand what's happening, that it's going to take her some time just to collect herself to where she can even make a decision and know what to do. That's a level of terror that I think very few people have to face. I don't believe I've ever had to face it. You know, and I can't imagine what it would be like. I can't imagine that you just have a cool head. You know, I would think that you would do stupid things like, you know, bang your head, you like run into a wall and things like that because you're terrified and it's hard to make sense of things. And that's why I think, you know, when people complain about the trope in horror films that people do stupid things, like don't go there, don't do that. People are terrified. They can do really stupid things when they're terrified. Because
that is true, but usually they do the stupid thing in the early part of the movie before they are terrified.
I guess you're right. Yeah. And I don't think anybody
don't open the box. Don't go in the basement.
Don't go in the basement. Yes. Don't hide in the room full of knives. And I think this film avoids that trope. Nobody does anything really stupid beforehand.
Well, it's Stephen King. Nobody ever does stupid stuff
and it's
like
also
that.
Stanley Kubrick.
Well, but in Stephen King's stories, there aren't really moments of, "Oh my God, why did you do that? Don't ever do that. That's stupid."
Yeah. He avoids that trope. And I've never read his books, but you would know. I wouldn't. But, you know, one thing, though, I would say that I realized watching it now, it's been so long, is how smart Danny's character is during the film's ending. Once he's got Jack Torrance chasing after him, Danny runs into the maze, which he and his mother have already explored. So he's got a little bit of an edge. And of course, Jack Torrance is injured. He's having trouble walking. And he's running around carrying an axe in the freezing cold. I remember you asked, why is Danny not freezing? And I just said adrenaline, you know. And he's younger and he's not injured the way Jack is. But he runs into the maze. He's been in there once before, so he has a little bit of an edge. And he has the very smart idea of running up to a point where there's now 3 possible ways he can go, or I think it was 3 or 4 possible ways, stopping, backing up and walking over his own tracks, going off to one side and hiding and erasing his tracks from there. And
Yeah, until Jack passed him, and then he was able to
backtrack and follow his own tracks back out. Yeah. And I'd kind of forgotten all of that. And I was just thinking, smart kid, and his dad, Jack Torrance, underestimated him.
Yeah.
Totally underestimated. Of course, he's going crazy too, but he wasn't smart enough to think that maybe he backtracked or something. And he just keeps going on until, of course, he freezes to death, until he can't go anymore. It's not too long after that. In fact, even up to that point, where he's really tiring out, and you can see the cold is starting to really get to him, even though he's nuts. Where it's taking a toll on him, and he can't go on too much longer. I would say that at this point, having watched it now some 40 years later, the film was a lot more effective to me.
Yeah.
A lot scarier, even though I'd already seen it. A lot creepier. A lot more, I think even more intense than when I was younger. I think it was even more intense of a film.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I did. I wasn't that impressed with it the first time around, honestly.
Really? Is that because of your comparison to the book?
I think so. Yeah.
Do you think this time you're just watching it more as its own separate thing?
Yeah.
Separate from the book? And I think that's something I think movie-going audiences are getting better about, that we can view the source material and then view the adaptation. And there was once a time when I think that if we knew the source material and the adaptation was not strictly adherent to it, we'd say they ruined it because it wasn't what we know of the source material. But I think audiences were getting better now at saying this is just a different version of it.
Yeah.
You know.
And I mean, I remember the basics of the book, but I don't remember probably all the details.
Sure, it's probably been a long time.
That's probably helping with that.
Enjoying the film more.
I haven't, I haven't read the book since since my first time. I haven't reread it or anything like that, or revisited the book. So, it's been more than a longer time since I read the book than I saw the movie the first time around. So,
a lot of times with Kubrick films, they get released and sometimes they have mixed reviews, but then decades later get reappraised as kind of universally as classics.
Yeah.
This film, like a lot of his films, did not exactly go over. I think that horror fans weren't too crazy about it, and the type of people who like Stanley Kubrick, art house director, maybe before that term existed, were kind of turned off by the fact that he made a horror film, which was considered lowbrow. But like a lot of, and I think now you look in the world we live in now, where horror films, we have what's called art house horror films.
Yeah.
That
is true.
And we have films that are considered existential terror films, which are a different type of horror film. And so you can look back now and think Stanley Kubrick was, like he is with a lot of things,
ahead of his time.
Way ahead of his time with what he was doing with this film. And Eyes Wide Shut, I want to watch that one again. I remember being kind of confused by the ending of Eyes Wide Shut, being kind of like, that's it?
Yeah.
That's the film? And a lot of reactions to that film were a lot of people were very off-put by Eyes Wide Shut and wondered if it was really the film he wanted, because he passed away before it even premiered. And I think a week before it premiered, he passed away. I could be wrong about that. Internet, please correct me on that if I'm wrong. But now people are starting to come around, and I'm seeing a lot of online critics saying that they see the film very differently now. And it's getting a reappraisal. And this happens, I guess, this happened with him plenty of times. You think we'd learn our lessons by now.
Yeah.
2001: A Space Odyssey, while some thought it was amazing, it also received a huge share of negative reviews. I think it still does to this day. I know that there are some audiences that just don't like how slow that film is, but
especially today.
Especially today's audiences who are used to fast-paced films,
nonstop.
Yeah, especially when they're science fiction related. You know, that they're fast-paced, but that's another story. But yeah, I'm really glad I saw this again. It's been too long, and
Yeah.
I am looking forward. We've got 2 commentary tracks on this film and this Blu-ray that we picked up. Which, by the way, great deal. It was a triple disc Blu-ray set.
Feature, yeah.
Bought on Amazon for like $12-13.
Yeah, you should do a link to it.
Yeah, I should. The Shining, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and A Clockwork Orange. But yeah, a great deal, like $12-13, and you get 3 movies. Anyways, though, everybody, happy Halloween, and share with us your thoughts on Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and
let us know what your favorite horror movies are.
And
he's calmed down a little.
He's calmed down a bit. Yeah, he's probably gonna he's probably gonna have to sleep with us tonight.
I suppose.
Poor little guy. Anyways, though, you're 50, dude. Get over it. Anyhow, though, everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Happy Halloween. Bye-bye.
Bye. You would think being held by the post-empire
yeah,
that he'd get over a little bit.
Yeah, you think he'd be less afraid with all
had
he's
some
been
pretty
through.
Scary stuff happen to him.
He sure has.
And surviving the Jedi Purge and
yeah.
Chill out, dude.
Bye.